Chirohustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Community Healthcare Resources, Life Chiropractic College West, TrackStat, and M-Sculpt. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 448 of the Chirohustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we have the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Daniel Pompa. And if you want to hear about the chemical subluxation and how to remove it, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chirohustle podcast. I'm really excited. Got Daniel Pompa here with me today on episode 448. The cellular detox system that he has is going to probably be something all of you want to tune into. During this episode, we're going to give some drop of a link, which I'll post here shortly after I do the introduction, but we'll post the link of where you guys can go onto his live stream he has coming up this Thursday. It's really close to production time, so jump in on the link and the offer that he's going to be promoting during this episode. But before we get into episode 448 with Daniel Pompa, I want to tell you all the big why. Why do we do what we do over here at Chirohustle? Well, we protect freedom of speech with this show. And as you know, over the past couple of years, that's been a sensitive topic with the encroachment upon, disinformation and the way that people get deplatformed. So we're really excited to protect freedom of speech for medical freedom. And we also protect the sacred trust. If you guys don't know what that means, and many of you might not, it's not your fault, but go and search for BJ Palmer's Sacred Trust and find out what that really means. And you'll learn a whole lot more about chiropractic and the chiropractic profession and why we do what we do for chiropractic. And then we also believe in subluxation-based chiropractic, universal intelligence, and innate intelligence. And that when somebody gets adjusted, it connects man or woman, the physical, to man or woman, the spiritual. And with that being said, Dr. Daniel Pompa, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Love it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we got a chance to connect out at the Dave Asprey's biohacking conference.
Yeah, that was a great event. Gosh, we had a little corner of people that we all knew each other from like way back, right? And chiropractic, and I think that was the first time I actually met you live, wasn't it?
Yeah, like I've seen you speak at College Jam a handful of times.
Yeah,
and I've always been really inspired by the work that you do. So having you on our show today it's a real blessing to me, and not only me, but I'm sure to our audience today too.
Yeah, appreciate it. Love being here. It's great podcast you have with a great purpose.
Well, I know that you're a chiropractor, and that's one of the things that I love most about what our show does is it features chiropractors and chiropractic stories. And I know that there's the big 3 T's: thoughts, traumas, and toxins, which actually cause subluxation. And you help with one of those T's, which is the chemical component. And let's talk a little bit about how you got into chiropractic, and let's then link that into how you help with chemical toxicity.
Yeah, gosh, the story of how I got into chiropractic could be a long one, but I promise it won't be. It just potentially could. I was called here. I always say there's 3 times that I literally, God spoke to my heart, not audibly, but to my heart, where I knew that I knew that I knew. Becoming a chiropractor was one of them. I was at that place in my life, and I was working for a guy. I was kind of in between things. I was, really looking for my sole purpose. And I was just helping a friend of mine sell gym memberships because I was into fitness. And I was always like looking this way, and I couldn't turn to the right fully. And he said, "You got to go see my brother. You got to go see my brother." And I said, "I don't go to doctors, right? I just don't go to doctors." Right. And my father was an Italian bricklayer. His father was a stonemason. Right. I was 3rd generation in this country. My father was 2nd. And he was just raised like that, right? So I was raised like that. Like we didn't take drugs. Like it was one of those things. So it got bad enough where he said, look, you'd love my brother. He's not like the doctors you think. So he told me enough. I went in, and from the moment, so I'm in the waiting room, and I'm watching a piece from Reggie Gold. Okay, I never saw Reggie Gold, never heard Reggie Gold, but everything he was saying, I'm like fascinated with, right? And I would come in every day and be like, hey, could you put that back on? I was kind of watching it halfway. Like every time I would go into his office, I would dial back into Reggie Gold. And I went to his doctor's report, and I was like, of course, who doesn't believe this? In short order, he was like, Dan, you need to be a chiropractor. You need to be a chiropractor. And within a few years, that's exactly what happened. I ended up to be a chiropractor.
Well, it comes with a lot of integrity too, the profession, and it takes a special group of people to perpetuate and to carry on the mission of chiropractic. And, I think a lot of times people are born into chiropractic, but I think a lot of times they say, did you choose chiropractic or did chiropractic choose you?
Yeah.
And I think that's a common theme in this world is maybe because of the dysfunction you're experiencing with your limited range of motion, chiropractic chose you.
Yeah, I was a wrestler and was pounced on this way and compression fracture. Most people would have went to the hospital, right? I couldn't move my neck I'm telling you, it was probably months, right? I didn't go to doctors. And wasn't until he took those x-rays that was like, dude, you fractured your neck, right? I mean, like, did you know that? I'm like, no.
Most of the time people are so like beat up and sore and injured that they don't know that they have a fracture.
Didn't know.
And then you're telling me off camera that you started studying chiropractic biophysics.
Yes, structure affects function. It was like something I just gravitated to while I was in school. I remember the day I met Don Harrison, and it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And there's studies. I was a study reader. I wanted to, really understand more. It all made sense to me. I was in.
Mm-hmm. So let's fast forward people a little bit and talk a little bit about the chemical subluxation, because I know that's an important part of the work that you do and how you serve people and how you help others serve people.
Yeah, look, here we go again. What I do now and today, and I have for 20 years now. I didn't choose it; it chose me. So here I am, functioning as a very busy practice. I mean, I was seeing over 800 a week by myself. So, just changing lives. Loved what I did. 2 young kids at the time. Amazing marriage. All's well until it wasn't well. All of a sudden, fatigue started, and I thought I was training hard because I was racing bikes at the time at the expert level, running a busy practice. Yeah, I must be overtraining. Well, I cut back on my training. Worse. I stopped training. Worse. Couldn't even ride 5 miles without being wiped out fatigue. Then it went to anxiety. Then it went to panic attacks. Then it went to insomnia. I mean, my adrenals were fried. My thyroid wasn't functioning. My hair was thinning. I mean, all these hormonally bad things were occurring. I addressed all of them. My adrenals, my thyroid, still wasn't getting my life back. Everything I teach today is what I learned to get my own life back, right? And our philosophy is what led me out, right? It was remove the interference, the body does the healing. My adrenals weren't, adapting. My thyroid wasn't adapting, although my blood work was normal, which was frustrating, but it wasn't. And my hormones weren't functioning the way they should because there was something upstream. And intuitively, I knew it, right? I knew just trying to fix my thyroid from a functional medicine standpoint wasn't going to work. But although I was just trying to find sanity in my insanity world that it became. And ultimately, that's how I got my life back. I finally figured out it. But granted, it took me 4 years of a life not worth living, of absolute struggle, wanting to die, not live, until I found the answer. But it also led me to everything that I do today. So from pain to purpose, has been my mantra for sure.
I mean, that's a story that I'm sure a lot of practitioners resonate with. A couple years ago, one of my dear friends that sponsored our show for a while, He's like, you know what, man, you're only getting 20% of the chiropractic population. I'm listening to your show. I'm like, I think that's really good.
I think that's great.
And he's like, yeah, but you can do better. And that's really when it started to make sense to me that I saw the pain in the profession and we could do better. And that's why the show really has like the motivation behind it that it does. And there's a fire in it. And I see that same fire in you too. And I see that fire that you just have like a bigger purpose and a bigger mission. And getting people healthy is something that's really important to you. And I know that didn't come easy because obviously when you go through health challenges and you actually get to that point where you find a solution for yourself, you want to scream to the rooftops. And that's really why most chiropractors become chiropractors, because they were healed by chiropractic and they're like, darn, this is great.
I couldn't ignore it. I mean, here I am. So, I mean, when I was sick, my practice plummeted. So, you're bad when you pray that there's no new patients and you hope your schedule just kind of goes, down to nothing because I just didn't have the energy. I was embarrassed, frankly. I mean, to be quite honest, I was hiding from it. I wouldn't tell people, right? And so it was not a pretty time. But God had a purpose in it, right? And then after I got my life back, right, then they start coming, right? The people like, oh, I know what's wrong. Yeah, I know what's wrong. And that's really how it was birthed. And then 2 days of my busy practice, I started dedicating to those people. And then it went from that to like, hey, could you teach what you're doing at my seminar? And then it was starting to teach other people's seminars. Then I started teaching my own seminars. And it's almost 20 years of this now.
Really cool story, man. And let's just turn the clock back a little bit to this big busy practice that you had. What were you doing for marketing? I mean, how are you attracting these new patients that eventually you didn't want anymore?
It's outdated, man. I mean, if I told you, it'd sound too simple. I was doing doctor's reports and speaking the truth without, watering it down. And I was passionate and I was just on purpose, man. Honestly, today I just was at a seminar, the UAC seminar you and I were chatting about, right? And I'm looking at all these like clever marketing strategies. I'm like, my gosh, if I had this, right? And like follow-up conversion strategies, I'm like, gosh, right? It was like, I did it the hard way, right? It's like, but look, I built a community though, too. I educated people about topics that I was passionate about, right? And I built a community of warriors who all built my practice with me and for me, in the community because I educated them and they would bring their friends, they would bring their friends, and I would just do topics, from a principled standpoint, right? It's like little did I know that I was going to step into the real, a huge reason why so many people were sick and don't know why they change their diet and still can't get well, why they exercise and still can't lose weight, and blah, blah, blah. And the list goes on. I would have never discovered what I discovered unless I got sick. I wouldn't have. You could have gave me $10 million, wrote the check and said, go back to school, figure it out. I wouldn't have. It's impossible. So I had to go through it to learn it.
So who are some of your early heroes and mentors that helped shape you into that early practitioner that you became?
It became Reggie Gold. After watching him on the video, I had to meet the man. And I know you've had his lovely wife on this show. How many times?
We had her one time, but she was episode 400.
Okay. Yeah. Well, she's about to be on again. Maybe you said, okay. But, I got into a debate with Reggie and, we were, it was a good debate, right? About chemical subluxation, if you will. And, Reggie, right? He was just hammered and, I love the man, right? It's like, this is the chiropractor's job, right? In the focus. And he was right in many aspects, right? I was just some young student that, thought maybe I knew something, but knew nothing probably. But, here I am later in life where now chemical subluxation has become just a massive interference, right? And I think even Reggie today would realize that because we hold the philosophy as chiropractors there's a responsibility with it. Look, I wouldn't have got my life back by running thousands of dollars worth of tests, looking at microbiome, genetic SNPs, all the stuff. I would have spent more money without a solution. I could have taken the best products, the best biohacks. I still wouldn't have got my life back, James. How did I get my life back? I found the interference and I removed the interference, right? So, there is a responsibility. That is ultimately how we heal the body.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Community Healthcare Resources, Life Chiropractic College West, TrackStat, and MSculpt. Let's hustle. Well, I talk to people all the time, and just like sitting at a restaurant or something, or sitting in a line somewhere, I tell people the chiropractic story. And I think that it's so vacant to people that a lot of times, they think that chiropractic is for neck pain, back pain, and headaches. And I was like, well, there's so much more to it. Like it helps with your baby's development, and it helps with your stomach issues, and it can help with developmental things in people. And I just have to really tell that story to people. So I think that there's a huge responsibility, like you said, is when you find something and you find out that it works for you. Yeah, it's really important to tell people what a chiropractic job is and what a chiropractor actually does.
Yeah, and you have to meet people where they are, meaning, in a conversation, you kind of feel where somebody's coming from, right? And layer an education in properly, right? I remember, obviously I've coached a lot of chiropractors over the years, and I would say, look, you can meet people where they are in the sense of even their understanding, right? And then start to layer in, because remember, when they first meet you, they don't trust you. There's no trust or rapport, right? And until you have trust and rapport, you really don't have the authority or the right to teach somebody something new, or at least what they don't, try to change their belief system, right? One of the example I always give people is, a great thing to market with is cholesterol and how dangerous it is. Okay, first of all, I don't even agree with that, right? Because I believe cholesterol is incredible, and LDL, the bad cholesterol, ultimately is at the top of the hormone chain, and we have it all wrong when it comes to cholesterol. And I could do a whole lecture on that, and I do. However, you can't meet somebody and tell them cholesterol is not bad. They've heard every expert in the world tell them it's going to kill them and that they should take these drugs. They've listened to every ad on television. Not a good place to start, right? But cholesterol might just not be the whole answer. All right, I'm willing to listen to that, right? Then you can, after you have trust and rapport, after they go, hey, you've helped me, or you're an expert here. Now I can layer in. Let me tell you the real truth about cholesterol. Now they're listening, right? No different with subluxation, right? If you just start, about subluxation as we do passionately out of school, right? What are you talking about, right? They can't even understand it, but after they trust, you build that trust rapport. Now you can tell them a whole nother level of what chiropractic really is.
So important. And, early on, from how you're doing your doctor's talk to now you're coaching chiropractors and you're coaching wellness professionals, you do cellular detoxification. I'm fascinated by it just because I know what you're actually doing behind the scenes, but maybe tell people a little bit about your program.
Yeah, look, first of all, at the heart of the program is about getting to the cause, meaning that when we look at why people really aren't getting well today, there's some big neurotoxins that are missed. If they aren't missed, they're incorrectly. It's become hash lines. Let me give an example. Remember, neurotoxin is the type of toxins that go right into the brain and the nerve system. They have an affinity for it. So they are the ultimate chemical subluxation. Very difficult when your brain is poisoned, that the message is that the healing ability, the innate intelligence, you better bet your life that it interferes with that. Sure does. And I was a living case of it. I believed it stronger after living it. Many of the toxins, and I can go back in my story a little bit, but I'm going to make my point, and then I'll tell you what toxin I had in my brain. But these toxins like mold, people that are living in moldy homes, they oftentimes don't know it. They don't smell it. They definitely don't see it. They get an air test done if they do suspect it, and it comes back negative because air testing is not going to work. Heavy metal toxicity. It's typically either done by blood, maybe urine, but it's not done correctly, and it doesn't reflect what's in the brain. So typically missed. Oh, and even if you go to a functional medicine doc and they think you might have heavy metals, then they absolutely do it incorrectly. It's become a passion of mine to teach practitioners and doctors how to do it correctly. Hidden infections, big missing thing here. People have hidden infections in whether if they had a root canal or if they had a tooth extracted, like a wisdom tooth. These infections end up in their jaw, affecting their immune system. 25 years later, now they have autoimmune, they have cancer, they have all these things which studies show drive all of those problems. Those three in particular, and there's others, but those three in particular, I tend to try to educate people on that they are upstream sources. Here today, James, we're at the gut, second brain, right? Number one, we forget about this brain. When this brain's poisoned, you don't fix this brain, okay? It is the second brain. However, when we're trying to fix this brain by taking probiotics, there's a time and a place. But the analogy is this: upstream, up the river, so to speak. So if you bought a property, you spent all this wonderful money on this gorgeous property on the river, and you see the fish are dying, the ecosystem looks like heck, plants are not living right, the algae aren't right. And so you spend a lot of money to get it fixed. You repopulate the fish, the organisms, etc. 3 months later, it's dead again. You do it again, spend more money, hire a different expert, maybe two experts, and then third time, finally, your neighbor comes and says, hey, George, 20 miles up the river is a factory dumping mercury into the water. You might as well save your money, because until that goes away, your efforts are fruitless. Well, that's exactly what's happening today in functional medicine. I have just as many frustrations in functional medicine as I do allopathic medicine. It's just different, but because functional medicine has left the fact that we're trying to get to causes. And if you don't get to those upstream causes, you are not going to fix the body.
So let's tell some doer grade information then. What can people do to find the issues that are surrounding the cause?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's some things, let me give some solid things that people can do right now, right? One, I talked about hidden infections. There's something called a cone beam now that I didn't have when I was sick. It's a 3D CAT scan of the jaw that you can't see these things on x-rays. Caution, regular dentists read cone beam like plain films. There's a special software because they're 3D. You have to be able to go around and look for the lucencies. They have to have special training. So in my program, we have dentists that are trained in this to make sure someone doesn't have this as a problem. We have a guy who goes even virtually now and teaches people how to actually inspect their home for high EMF loads. By the way, another hidden source of why people can't get well. Their dirty electricity, their EMFs in the house are so dangerously high that their body eventually malfunctions, or how to look for mold correctly. So, and then heavy metals, we teach basically how to do the best test possible, which, and with heavy metals, there's a lot of there's no perfect test, let me just say that. But so anyways, you can go, here's a little thing, go to VCS, it stands for Visual Contrast Sensitivity Tests.com, and you can do that test. It's one of still the most accurate ways of assessing for what we call biotoxic illness. If you fail the test, then there's a good chance you're getting a biotoxic exposure, meaning living in a moldy home. It could even signify that you're getting some hidden infection somewhere. The doctors that I train have these tests in their office. It is a level more accurate than the online version because you have to make sure people can actually see. You're not measuring acuity, you're measuring contrast. One of the nerves that we're able to measure is the optic nerve, which is very sensitive to specific neurotoxins. So there's some things people can do.
I think it's fascinating. I actually had a Nuka doc this summer do some cone beam films of my spine and my neck, which is really cool to see a 3D molding of like my cervical spine, which I think if anybody can get that done, it's pretty cool too.
Yeah, we also use them for airway. A lot of people that just have no energy, don't know what's wrong. They have airway issues. And cone beam, you can do it at a different angle and actually see literally the size of their airway. And you can have airway issues from birth because you didn't nurse. You can have airway issues because your palate is too narrow. You can have airway issues because your tongue is, because of a palate problem, doesn't sit in the right position and blocks your airway, especially at night. So we have people hooked up to CPAPs thinking that's the answer, and it works on the short term, but the long-term answer is what physically is interrupting the airway. Because a lot of these infections drive inflammation and block airway. So you can see my program is literally set up to get to the cause. And then what do we do on the back end? Because you could say, okay, great. So to finish my story, I had mercury that bioaccumulated mostly in my pituitary hypothalamus. Now, keep in mind, that controls my thyroid, my adrenals. That's why I chased my thyroid and adrenal problems for so many years without, a lasting solution. I realized, what? I think it's the pituitary. I can just tell it's the control tower that's screwing this thing up. I went for that with a year, not understanding what was wrong. And then I found Mad Hatter's disease online. And I don't know if you remember what that is, but people making felt hats used mercury to attenuate mold in the felt. And they became known as Mad Hatters. They went absolutely nuts. I had all the symptoms. So I went and got a blood test, negative. It was another year later. Thank God, I was working with a bright endocrinologist, and he said, Dan, I think you have mercury toxicity. I'm like, yeah, I thought so too. What test did you do? I did a blood test. Wrong test. That would be for acute mercury poisoning, like the Mad Hatters. But if anything, you have chronic. Sure enough, then I realized, okay, I was accumulating a lot of metals because my pathways were shut down. So I said, well, what do you think when this happened? He said, did you get any dental work done around when it began? And sure enough, I did. I had 2 silver amalgam fillings removed, which contained 50% mercury. Still do. Those fillings always contain 50% mercury. And that kind of just sent my bucket overflowing. Now, keep in mind, I was also in a low-grade mold exposure, and I was training on my bike at a very high level. Physical stress, the moldic stress, and the mercury stress, I call that a perfect storm. And typically, that's what we have when the bottom falls out and we go, what the heck's wrong with my life? Typically, that's the case when someone can't get their life back, is there's a perfect storm. You haven't identified all the storms.
This is fascinating to me. I know we don't have a whole lot more time left on the interview. I do want to give your program a plug on Thursday. I put into the comments an Eventbrite link. You guys can go click on that. And he's given a great promo. His program sells for quite a bit more, but he's doing it for all of our listeners for a discounted rate. So jump on that, go click on the link and join Dr. Dan and learn more about his cellular detox program.
Yeah, that's a live stream. So you obviously can do it from anywhere. And it starts Thursday night, goes through Friday and Saturday. And you're going to hear information you've never heard before.
Yeah, I'm fascinated too, because I know that you were saying that this is open to not just practitioners, but coaches also, health coaches, to get people that extra something that they're not getting from somewhere else.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. And we're doing a certification for the first time where we're certifying people in what I've been teaching for, like I said, almost 20 years now.
I'm fascinated by it. I think that there's still a lot to offer. There's so many questions I still could ask you. I know one of the things that I think I can close out on, but like talking about the dental work, you don't have to have like an extraction or you don't have to have like a root canal or something for there to be toxicity in your dental work?
Listen, dental work, it's estimated that 80 to 85% of all disease starts here, right? And I know that's hard for people to believe, but this is a big problem because of the way we used to do dental work. Even just metal in the mouth creates galvanism. That's a battery effect that our brains hate. And when we have opposing metals, so let's say you have a bridge with metal and then you have another filling with a different metal, maybe it's gold, whatever it is. And you put it in an acid, that's your saliva. That's a battery, folks. Two opposing metals and an acid. And you have that current going into your brain. I can't tell you how many people we help just fixing that problem. Then we have silver fillings hidden under crowns with metal. So now we have metal on metal, which all those people end up getting sick. And then we have, root canals, which there is no safe root canal. Boyd Haley from the University of Kentucky did a study where all what we would call asymptomatic root canals, meaning no pain, no problems, were being sent to the lab. 100% of them had nasty anaerobes loaded with infection. There's a reason for that. You're right. Even impacted wisdom teeth. I had a wisdom tooth that was it was impacted correctly, if there's such a thing, but it had infection up underneath it. And that infection goes right into your bloodstream, screws up your microbiome, all of it.
So really your ideal client might be dentists.
Listen, we work closely with dentistry because, again, this is one of the upstream things we have to identify. Even people, they call them pockets that, in between every tooth, there's a certain amount, maybe 3 millimeter gap that's supposed to be there. Once that opens up above that, you end up housing bacteria. And again, everyone's trying to fix the gut, but you have a problem here upstream. These bacteria are in cahoots with these bacteria.
It's like having a bad air filter.
Yeah. You're not going to get well. Yeah, it's like so much disease starts in the mouth. We haven't even tapped into that. That's a whole podcast.
Well, Dr. Dan Pompa, thanks for being episode 448. There's a link there for you guys to click to go check them out. Really appreciate you being my guest today and sharing some wisdom with our audience and telling your chiropractic story and about how you managed your wellness journey back to being a practitioner and living congruent within your own model and teaching that to other people.
Yeah. Amen. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I just want you to have a great day out there in beautiful Park City, and I'll sign off here today from Grand Junction, Colorado, and I'll talk to you soon. And you guys are just one story away. Keep hustling. See you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.